Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. What up, y'all? This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks again. You know I got somebody special in the building. I got Rick Ross, the real one, Freeway Rick. I got to give a disclaimer, though, to start off. You know, I did a documentary on L.A., on the dope game, on Iran-Contra, and on Rick. So I just want to be fair to the game when I do this discussion. Rick, you want to say hello to the audience?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Can you turn me down a little bit?
Yeah, you good, Rick.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yep.
So essentially, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a discussion about a lot of things today. We're going to be talking about tax reform and trickle down and Reaganomics. That was the last time, right, Rick, that we saw trickle down. It wasn't good for the hood. We're going to have a discussion about what Jay-Z means and hip hop means to Black America, you know, the image of the dope man. We're going to have a discussion about, is Rick Ross the rapper whose real name is William Roberts? Why did he need your name to be a rapper? We're going to touch on John Singleton's show a little bit. And we're going to talk about, are black men targeted for prison, or was it a choice to sell dope? Or was it a mix of both? So we here with Rick. You know, Rick, tell me something. Because everybody wants me to, you know, really come with this question, and I have to as well. Did you and the dope game destroy Black American progress? We coming out of the Black Panther movement. We coming out of so much. Do you feel like you played a predominant role, or you and people like you all across this country, in stopping Black progress?
I mean that's a hard one to say. You know, I don't think one particular incident created. And let me rephrase it. I'm gonna go back. No, absolutely not. The dope game is not the worst thing that ever happened to Black America. I believe the brainwashing, the post-traumatic slave syndrome is probably the thing that we suffer from the most, because without the brainwashing, a person couldn't sell drugs. You know, without looking for an identity, looking for something to be, we wouldn't sell drugs. But when you don't know who you are, where you come from, or what you're supposed to be doing, then you're vulnerable to become a drug dealer.
Yeah. And the interesting thing that I see is that Black America, in a lot of ways, has to deal with a lot of things all at once, and we got to be nimble with that. And what I come back to is not whether it destroyed absolutely, but did the choice to sell drugs play a major role in the reason we saw regression in, like, Black males being active participants in politics, being part of business communities? Can we get honest here and really have that discussion about, like, the role of dropping that amount of weight, that amount of money into the ghetto all at once?
It definitely created issues inside the community, and in the long run, it did take out, I believe, most of the entrepreneurs that was inside of our neighborhoods, the leaders, the guys who didn't mind taking chances.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I start looking at this thing, what I feel is we gotta be kind of real about this and look at this in context of what we saw today. You know, trickle down, Reaganomics. For all those people that are asking who this guest is, if you're not familiar with the Iran-Contra and you're African American in this community, it's a problem. You should go Google it. Because what we saw in this community, and I did a documentary called Freeway Cracking the System, nominated for an Emmy. It was about the reality of his story along with the larger looming reality of the dope game across this nation. And what we saw is a ravaging of the Black community, particularly poor communities in large, when you starve the beast, which is like essentially cutting taxes, trickle down, and it don't trickle down, and the Black community gets blighted. And I wanted to come to Rick and ask him, what did LA look like the last time that we had major trickle-down tax reform?
Well, when Ronald Reagan, basically, he took all the programs out of the community. He took summer jobs out. the unemployment rate was skyrocketing. Um, it was a place of desperation, where guys didn't have opportunities to take their skills, their mindsets. So when the drugs came in, it was an easy fix. It's easy to come in and give people hope when they have no hope.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was an interesting process, I have to say, in doing this documentary, and it only allows me to do this interview in a much more intimate kind of way, because there were so many interesting times of talking to you, whether it be the example of a buying a house with dollar bills, a $200,000 house with dollar bills, or putting up the initial money for Anita Baker, if I'm correct.
Correct.
You put up the money in a duffel bag for Anita Baker.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, and for her first album. Or for that matter, some of the other stories that I've heard. This is a call-in show. Again, Dash Radio, press the Dash Talk app. If you have any issues with sound, go to the Dash Radio app, press the Dash Talk button. We going to be here. You can call in at 323-879-4445. Voice your opinion. We're going to be taking calls throughout the next hour and 15 minutes, well into 8:15. And we're going to have this discussion. We're going to have the discussion about, is Jay-Z a problem? We're going to have this discussion about Freeway Rick and Rick Ross and the names. I have to again disclose I was one of the attorneys on Rick's side, so I'm kind of biased. But we going to have it today about so many things. And what I'm starting off with is this tax reform, because I don't hear no black people really understanding ain't going to be no more child deductions. This makes it so that everybody gets $12,000 off. That's it. No more you get extra if you have extra kids. And the question becomes, are we ready to deal with a community that is blighted? Rick, I'm going to go to a caller. Just take this caller. I love caller. Can you turn down your background? Can you turn on your background? Caller, what is your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how you doing, Antonio? This is Jason calling from New York.
Oh, what's up, Jay? We love that New York call, even though we from Cali. So,
Yes, sir.
so go ahead. You want to ask a question of me, Rick? Do your thing.
Yeah, just have a quick comment. I'm not gonna hold you guys too much. I want to just soak up that game that you're talking about. But basically, I do think that the aberrations that we have in our community, whether it be through entertainment, sports, music, whatever, I really do think they're kind of hurting, the cause for the general black society. I know you got Freeway Rick on there, man, and I understand like what it was back in the day, but unfortunately, when you try to apply that concept into 2017, I know you had to do what you had to do back in the day, but nowadays it's like, wow, can we apply that same mindset to today? And you kind of get lost in the shuffle by trying to apply those hustles of maybe the 70s or 80s out of desperation. Now you got to apply it to today. It's like it don't work, it don't apply, and it's hurting a lot of us in our mindset. So I just want to drop that knowledge and listen to you guys and just soak up more game from you guys. I appreciate everything you guys do.
Rick, let's go. Thank you, caller, for calling in. So, the last time we saw this was in the 80s, and I've showed people on my page. You can go to my Facebook page and see this. Wealth inequality wasn't what it is today, and people starved. I want you to give us a reality of what made you get into the dope game. Because let me give a context for everybody. And this isn't for glorification. This is for a ruler. When you put Rick's entire sales into context, it comes into something like $2 billion with a B with inflation. So you're dealing with a black guy here who in the late 70s, early 80s, literally saw millions of dollars and then saw what it does to a community that had no exposure to wealth overnight. And so I want to come to you and say, I remember you told me something about the first time you saw somebody with a gold hubcap on their chain. And it was just...
He just got out of prison.
What made them do that with the money?
Well, he had never had money before, and he wanted to show everybody that he was wealthy now. And in his mind, he didn't understand what wealth was. He thought wealth was having a Rolls Royce, a Ferrari, a Benz, even though he stayed on 88th and Broadway.
So imagine a world where you rolling down 88th and Broadway and a Guinea passed by you, Lamborghini orange.
Everybody gonna look.
Everybody gonna look. It's just a trip because I come to you, and one of the things that I picked up talking to you, I had a lot of questions over the course of making the doc. But one of the things that picked up is you had an experience of being a black young man with $1 million in cash in a duffel bag that you could do anything you want with.
Yeah, it was mine.
And so my question to you is, what does your mind wrap around going from literally having nothing? I'm talking about like stealing Spam to having $1 million in a duffel bag. What do you start thinking about?
Freedom. It felt like being free. You know, where now you could do a lot of the things that you dreamed about doing, you thought about doing. You know, when we come up, everybody's like, I want to look out for my mom. I want to make sure my family is good. And in an environment where people are literally starving and you're able to support your family, it puts you in a state of mind and in a being that most people don't get to.
Let's go back to this starving thing. And I'm going to take a caller in a second. I see y'all lighting the lines up. Rick, you done brought the heat. LA had a lot of garbage men. If I remember, we did the book and your uncle was a garbage man, correct?
Yep.
You wanted to be a garbage man, right?
I didn't mind.
And what ended up happening is, coming to Rick, is, as I understand it, by the time he comes of age, there aren't garbage jobs. They have privatized. And so essentially, you have privatization trickle down, dry up the job market. And what we're left with is the government, you know, through the Iran-Contra, what we were able to expose, and our documentary had the Nicaraguans on camera for the first time ever, is that they didn't put it here, meaning the government, but they didn't say no. Right, Rick?
Yep, no doubt. They literally admitted that they knew that their guys was trafficking in the cocaine, and they went as far as going and doing a letter to the Attorney General saying that can you take off the books that it's illegal for us not to report drug dealing?
I mean, when you start thinking about the context of what, you know, a lot of people don't understand that black people didn't really use the word million back in the late 70s, right? Like 1,000 was a lot.
I didn't know what 1,000 was.
See? And so you don't realize, one of the things I started to deal with, because I talk about wealth a lot, Rick. Middle black family in this country worth $4,000 without the family car. Middle black.
You know, I love talking about wealth.
Yeah, you like talking about it.
All day.
Middle black family in LA is worth $200 liquid, Rick.
Wow.
So what you end up with is this dynamic today. And what's interesting about Rick's story is not just his personal story, but the reality of a community that first is blighted and stays blighted, and then has this large summed product called cocaine dropped into the center of that blight. And then when people touch it, we see massive amounts of punishment as a result. I want to go to the caller and see where they at with it. Caller, what is your name? Where are you calling from?
Yo, what's up, Tone? This is Reggie from Boston. What's happening?
What up, Boston? Hey, middle black family in Boston worth $8, according to William Darity.
Yo, I was just about to set it off with that. The middle white family has close to $250,000. We got 8 over here, Tone. It's
8
serious.
liquid, $8. Let me think what you can buy with $8.
Huh.
You can buy one value meal. Oh yeah, you $1 short because they $9 now.
Listen, Tone. Over here, you can't even get a value meal for $8.
Yeah. Anything you want to say to Rick today?
Yo, I just want to say, you know, shout out to you, shout out to Tone. Just to answer one of your questions, I definitely think that Jay-Z is a problem. I mean, I respect him as a lyricist. He has great music, but when it comes to politics, I really don't want to hear from him. I watched that New York Times interview that he did. It was just a bunch of nonsense.
All right, we gonna get to this right now, caller. Thank you for calling in. What I want to do is bring it to Rick. We recently had Jay-Z on stage. I covered it. I covered him and Puffy. You know I be coming, Rick. Rick, no. We sat down with Dre. I pulled out the new Jim Crow. Tell him, new Jim Crow, and start reading it. Hey, you gonna learn something before you walk away from me. But let's go back to it. So nonetheless, coming back to it, Jay-Z comes on stage and say, black people need to boss up. Boss up as the answer to extreme wealth inequality and poverty. I've read, you've had opinions about Jay-Z. We've actually sat down with people close and gotten stories, right? So what I want to know is it real what he's representing about the dope game and the grandeur of it all? Because I remember you telling me dope dealers, when you were doing it, especially in the beginning, it was nothing glorious about it.
No. I have always questioned his legitimacy as a drug dealer. I don't believe that he really sold drugs. I would be surprised if he sold 5 kilos of cocaine in his life, or if he saw 5 kilos of cocaine. More than likely, if he did, it was with somebody else. I mean, just the way most of the people function right now in this society, it's a society of a dog eat dog. I made it, you make it. And I'm not gonna reach back and try to pull anybody up. And when we was coming up as drug dealers, we all tried to help each other. It wasn't like I'm better than you. I want to see your demise.
But ain't that interesting, Rick? It's funny because the dope game, we did the Planet Rock thing, and we were involved with it. We didn't do it, but essentially, when they did the whole critical analysis of it, it's so tied together, the dope game and Planet Rock. Now, essentially, we didn't have control over how they set it up, but what we did have ability to look at is how they were processing music and dope. You told me about an early dope song that actually was made about you.
Correct.
What song is that?
Master Spade.
Yeah. And what part would you actually?
He said, "Go to the dope man, you get an 8-track. You spend $300, you get $900 back." He was talking about where you could go and spend $300 and turn that 300 into 9, and that basically was how the dope game worked. Where we were making it readily available for people who didn't have 50,000, 100,000 could at least eat.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in many ways I look back at this. What hip hop did is it brought a competitive nature that wasn't there before. The whole battle of and don't get me wrong, the gang culture did as well, battling over blocks and everything like that. But I guess my question I pose back to you, and I'm going to bring it over to Rick Ross in a second, the rapper William Leonard Roberts, but with Jay-Z, what is the damage that he leaves behind by reflecting the game the way he is?
Well, it gives people a false sense of hope that is really not there, where a lot of young people think that they can go out and sell dope and, as Tonio and me talked many times, parlay that into a record deal. And that's not the case. Most of these guys never sold drugs, became good enough rappers or good enough marketers and rappers to where they were able to secure a deal with Def Jam, and Def Jam bought them the cars, the houses, and the jewelry, and most of it is leased and rented. One of the things that I do like that Jay-Z said on his new album is you live rich and you die broke. I thought that was a message to everybody, and that something had happened in his life, where he had been awakened by something.
So somebody in the thread, I'm gonna give him a fair shot. But Rick, you have sold a lot of dope and you pump poison into the communities. How do you reconcile that with that view of Jay-Z?
Well, we both pumping poison. When they rapping poison is the same as me selling poison. I think that a lot of the things that rappers are getting away with right now, I would have got locked up for. All they had on me to lock me up was some tapes where me and a guy was having a conversation about, and it wasn't even about drugs, but when it was decoded, that's what they said it was about drugs. And I believe that for guys to get on records and brag that they're selling drugs and encourage other people to sell drugs is exactly the same thing I did. I talked people into selling drugs. So
I'm going to take a caller before I go to break. Let's take this caller. Caller, what is your name and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Oakland, California.
Okay. Oh, damn.
And I would like to mention that one of the problems that we forget to pull together is the part about the illegal immigration and the economics in our communities, how it affects California, because it is really damaging Black people. We're being pushed out because citizenship doesn't have any value at all. You go into some of the hospitals and they have a big sign that says, "Welcome immigrants." Then we look at the job market, even if we do acquire the education and try to obtain a job, we can't get the job because we have all the various types of visas that are allowed within our government.
All right.
That there's no enforcement. And then also I want to say to Ross that I grew up in Oakland in the Murder Doves and with Mickey Moore and Felix and so forth, and the game and so forth. And it was a necessary thing to have a living to be able to eat and survive because we couldn't get jobs for most of us.
That's what people forget. That's what people forget is they don't contextualize it. They don't contextualize it.
They don't recognize that we couldn't, our fathers and mothers. I remember my mother working for $2.10 an hour. I remember going with her cleaning white people's houses and apartment buildings, washing toilets, and I had to help her. So they don't recognize that the little bit family that we had and the roof we had on the head, we had parents that were actually trying to provide, but were not lazy, didn't want to work, that myth that they always put out there. And especially I also want to mention Denzel and also Jay-Z. Jay-Z is full of crap because now once he's got to a level and he is dog, it's like the game when you hustling and flowing. He should have been talking about stacking money and buying property early on. Now he wants to clown these young rappers about
caller.
About putting money up to they like a phone and so forth.
Thank you so much. Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. It has to be broken up into pieces so we can give everybody a chance to get in here. Thank you so much for your opinion. I'm not trying to give anybody no short, but everybody's trying to get to Rick. Everybody's trying to get to this discussion. And this discussion isn't just about Rick. It's about trickle down and what tax reform is going to do. It's about rappers faking the funk. We're going to do one more caller. I was going to go to commercial break, but I'm going to let this next caller get in. Caller, what is your name and where are you calling from?
Maria from Seattle.
Maria calling every week, Rick. I love Maria.
Y'all all over the world.
Yeah, I got London one time. Come on, give it to me.
You killing it. Tonio killing it.
What you were saying about how rappers kind of deal out death in a different way from drugs, I completely agree with. And I was always thinking how pharmaceutical companies will give you a prescription of something that can be just as bad as street drugs, if not worse. And I don't think that's really talked about because people are really scared to speak about it because it is like the health industry, and doctors stereotypically don't want to hurt their patients, but it's very evident with the opioid epidemic, and every time I turn on my TV I see commercials for diabetes medicine, just everything. Like, I think the culture is making us sick, and I think it's targeted towards African Americans because we can't afford to go to the co-ops, the Trader Joe's. It's just not in our areas, and I think that's just as lethal as injecting meth or heroin. I mean, I know it's different, but I definitely do think black men are honestly just is population control.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Thank you for calling. I'm gonna throw this to Rick, and then I'm gonna go to commercial break. What I'm gonna ask you is, we see the new opioid like
Yep.
crisis. How is it different how they're treating this as a health epidemic versus like the crack cocaine was treated as a prison injustice? We need to lock them up kind of thing.
Well, now they're saying let's show patience, let's show love, let's care. Before it wasn't care, it was they're super predators. Let's lock them up for 30 years. Let's give them a life sentence. I actually had a life sentence without the possibility of parole, and I've never been caught with a gun. Nobody's never accused me of shooting at them or brandishing a gun or nothing like that. So it was totally different. The way that they put labels on the crack era and the new heroin era, and we can only hope that they learned a lesson from the crack era, that you can't incarcerate your way out of this, and hopefully that's why they're doing it instead of now that it's white kids getting high, and back in the 80s it was black kids.
Yeah, and this is Dash Radio. Press the Dash Talk button. What we're going to do is we're going to shift to a commercial break. Call 323-879-4445. Get your voice heard. We're going to be back in about a minute and a half, and be ready because we're so on fire.
Get on. Beats by Nevs.
What up? This is Antonio Moore with Tone Talks, The Real. And we here on one of the most disastrous days for Black America in a long time because of tax reform. Having this discussion with Freeway Rick, we talked about the documentary Freeway Cracking the System. But what we essentially really want to do is have a bit of a dialogue about the rapper Rick Ross. There was a lawsuit where Rick dealt with his name, the real Rick Ross dealt with his name, and this guy William, because that's a lot of people don't know, the rapper's real name is William Roberts. He is a former correctional officer,
and he do have a real name too.
Yeah. What was the value in your name? What was why did he need your name to rap?
Well, he knew that there was a lot of love for me in the streets. I had built up a street reputation that you couldn't pay for. You couldn't buy that name. And he also knew that nobody knew what I looked like. So he was able to slide in and be me before people found out that it was a real me. Since I've been on the street and out pushing a book and just meeting people, what I found out is that a lot of young people, parents had talked about me before to the kids. And
yeah, mine's did. Mine's actually had.
Yeah, so kids knew the name, but they didn't know what this person looked like. So him and Universal was able to take advantage of that opportunity and sell us these drug stories, that are not true.
And make sure you call in 323-879-4445. I have to come back to it though and ask, why do we love the anti-hero? Why is it that we love Frank Lucas and Rick Ross, and why is it that you can tour around the country after being a dope man?
Well, first of all, is we really don't have successful people in our community. Like I tell most people, they wanna crucify the young black drug dealer, and I'm like, well, the first entrepreneur that he met was a drug dealer, so quite naturally he wants to be like somebody that looks like him, walks like him, and in his community. And that's a sad reality. Even today, that's the case. Most young black men, first entrepreneur that they meet, even with the rappers, and I understand why the rappers rap so much about drug dealers, because more than likely a drug dealer paid for their studio when they first went in, bought their turntables.
A lot of people are going to ask the question. I mean, Rick, are you overstating it? And the funny thing is, when you look at rap, it's funny how it blossomed wherever dope hit. And I kind of looked at it as two waves that converged, because as I understand it, New York got dope later than us, and we got rap later than them. And so, like, some of these characters, like LL Cool J, you used to have him at the park, correct?
He came to a beach party and hung out in LA for quite a while.
And any dealings with Russell Simmons?
Russell was coming through LA and he was looking for money. A couple of my friends had made the introduction, and when he first started. So, I remember Russell before he got rich.
So everybody kind of knew,
to be rich.
But everybody knew where your money came from, right? Kind of.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, where else would you have gotten it from, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was on welfare all my life until I was 18 years old.
So you have this context of, and I think it's real hard for this generation that's been fed Jay-Z and LeBron James to imagine a world, and it's really the same world. Outside, the middle black family's worth $4,000 without the family car. I don't know how many ways I can say it. You take out the clothes and the TV, we back down to $1,500 or something. That's a whole family. And so that's today. So we have an idea of ourselves that matches nothing about reality. And people will say, what about white folks? What about white folks? Middle white families worth $140,000 without using that same math. 15% of their race is worth over $1 million. And they have 1 million families over 10 million. And we don't understand what it means to not have that in our race. Mm-hmm. And what it means is that you are extremely vulnerable. So we come back to the Iran-Contra and Reaganomics. I'm going to take you guys around. So how much was a key in 1978?
78?
78, 79.
About 80,000.
And literally, in the course of 3 to 4 years, how much did it drop to?
74.
No. I'm saying by the time we come to 84.
84?
By the time we get around to 84.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 84, probably around 17, 15,000.
And so where did this come from? Maybe you can explain the Iran-Contra a little bit for us.
Well, the Iran-Contra was a situation that had jumped off over in Iran. It started really in Iran, I believe, with the hostages. They took hostages in Iran, and they needed to get the hostages back. So what they did is they cut a deal with the Shah of Iran to get the hostages back. And once they got the hostages back, they took that money and shot the money to Nicaragua. The Nicaraguans got the money, and they said, well, this ain't enough money to fight no war. So they took the money and bought drugs. They also took the same planes that brought weapons and supplies over to Nicaragua, and they brought drugs back in those planes. That enabled them to lower the price at numbers that had never been seen before. The last time I sold I bought it for $9.5. So the price was slashed. We slashed the price.
And essentially, when we look at this thing, if you had a choice at day one between being if a garbage man's job was available and cocaine was presented to you, which would you have chosen?
Before I started selling drugs, I never would have thought I'd have been a drug dealer. If somebody would have told me a couple of days, a week before that I started, I'd have been like, you crazy. But once I was introduced and got started, I didn't want to be a trash man no more. You know, I was like, nah, not me. I'm going to live the life of the rich and famous, and that's pretty much how it happened. But yeah, I would have took any job. I would have worked at McDonald's. It didn't matter, you know. But my illiteracy also hurt me with getting a job by not being able to read and write at the time.
And so let's come back to this, Rick. Let's come back to who you are, where you come from. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in South Central LA.
No, I'm sorry. Early. Where'd you come from? Did you migrate here? Did you?
Oh yeah. My mom moved out here when I was about 3 years old, and then we moved right into South Central LA. As soon as we came out, we stayed right off of Broadway and Vernon. We stayed there for a couple months, and then we wind up in Watts for a while. I was in Watts when the Watts ride jumped off, you know, when the Black Panthers was going burn, baby, burn. I saw that. I was able to see the smoke, the fires. Right after that, we moved on 87th to Figueroa, where I grew up at until I became rich.
And so I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna go to a caller, but before I do that, I want people to do something for me. I want you to take this on this link on YouTube and share it to 2 Facebook pages. Everybody does that will spread the message that this dialogue is happening. And the other thing I want you to do, because I see y'all in the chat and y'all fired up, I'm loving the discussion. If you want me to ask Rick something and I see it, I'll definitely try. But let's use the super chat, because that's how we keep this thing going. Donate what you can, 5, 10, whatever you can. Support this this message. Let's keep this Tone Talks to Real going, because we're going to have it fired up. Let's go to the caller. Caller, what is your name? Where are you calling from? Turn down your background so we can make sure we get a good dialogue.
Okay, I got you. I'm calling from Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your name?
How you doing? Huh?
And your name?
Odell.
Oh, Odell, you got to stop trying to hide yourself. God, yeah. Odell, you gonna act like I didn't know you was calling. Go ahead. Give me your opinion.
Okay, well, I just wanted to throw some facts. I want to tell Freeway Rick Ross, I definitely, have a lot of respect for him and everything. I understand where he come from, because I come from, I'm from the hood and everything like that. So I grew up around a lot of, individuals that pretty much that was the option when it comes to entrepreneurship, coming out of the projects and everything. So I kind of see where he coming from. But you had someone, I don't know if it was a caller or somebody was saying something about, the effect that the drugs brought and everything like that. And I just want to throw these facts at you real quick. The top 3 causes of death in the United States, I say number 1 is, let me see, I'm sorry. Number 1 is poor diet, physical inactivity. The second one is, I think, tobacco. And third is alcohol. So what the government does is they like to label things and condemn certain things when really, a lot of it, they're doing the same things, selling, and it's affecting us in big ways. And then they'll condemn people like, Freeway Rick Ross. But he, for being an entrepreneur, taking something and taking an opportunity that he could take at the time and doing what he can. And I can tell that, he learned a lot from it. You can see the humility and the wisdom, just watching this and everything. He's very wise, and I have a lot of respect for him. But we got to really, Yeah, and we got to look at the whole scheme of things, man. You know, anything that's connected to brown folks, man, it's like boom, let's condemn it, and then wow, everything else that's killing us, you know, they putting on pedestals.
Odell, you want to ask anything specifically of Rick while he's here?
I mean, it's just a pleasure listening. It's like I'm really I'm a student. I'm just sitting in the chair, man. Listen, I don't really have any questions at the time right now, but I'm just paying attention and listening, man. It's definitely a pleasure, man, and great guest.
No doubt.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Odell, for calling in.
I'm gonna chime in on that because one of the things that he said, and I totally agree, is that the government don't really care about us using drugs. The only thing they care about is how's it going to benefit them. And with the crack, they were able to accomplish two goals. They were able to raise the money for the war, and they were also able to lock up the undesirable people, the people that they didn't want anyway, that they no longer had a need for, which was the young black male. Because if they was, I mean, there's way more people out here that's causing way more harm than even the heroin right now. They talk about the heroin epidemic, but we have a diabetic problem in this country.
That's my point.
And if you look at the companies that are causing this problem, they advertising on TV. You know, Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola and 7-Up and McDonald's. These people are serving food that they know have glucose and refined sugar and all sorts of stuff that they know are not healthy for us, but they allow them to do it because they're in a position of power.
So thank you for calling in, Odell. I appreciate that. What I wanted,
real quick, Tone. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. You still here?
Okay. He said exactly right. These are real statistics. First is tobacco. Second is poor diet and physical inactivity, and then alcohol. These are all things that's being advertised day to day and being influenced by people. So, I'm glad he made that point.
Thanks, Odell. You always call in with that fire, reading my notes again every week, Odell. Nonetheless, what I want to do, we're going to let him go. What I want to do now is just, again, take this link and share it on 2 of your Facebook pages that you follow. The forum pages, Powernomics and all that stuff. Share it there. Let's get this discussion going because this is a broad-based discussion because we're about to move into tax reform in a second. I'm going to take this next caller before I touch on tax reform. Caller, what is your name and where you calling from?
Brandon, about East Palo Alto.
Brandon, what's up, man? Bring it.
Not much, man. I was just calling to see what's going on, man, and tell you, man, I really appreciate what y'all got going. You and the whole family. And I want to speak on a little crack thing, man. I'm from East Palo Alto, and it's a documentary or a little thing called East Palo Alto and the crack epidemic that tried to kill a black family. And he explains how, crack basically tore up generations that came out here in the 50s and the 60s. And, speak on how real it is and how I don't think people understand the disconnect between what's going on in the black community and how crack really destroyed what we had going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you go back and Google the Frogman case. At the time, it was the biggest drug bust that had ever been recorded. And we have the Nicaraguan that was busted in our documentary in Nicaragua, talking about basically they didn't tell us to sell it to the blacks, but they didn't stop us.
Yeah.
And so what you start to deal with is, are we ready to ask the question of where did all the slavery go? Where did the cost of the slavery go? Did it go anywhere? And what I would argue, what we're seeing is a revisiting of those models that brought us into a space where crack could set in with this new tax reform. We see it's called starving the beast, and the beast is government. Because when you have tax reform, what ends up happening is that's the first step, which is essentially we don't have enough taxes to support the big government that we had before. So the next step is a budget where you cut food stamps by 30%. That's what they talking about. Yeah. We have a budget where you get Pell Grants cut by 20 to 30%. People got to go home from college. You get all kind of realities where jobs disappear. Post office jobs, garbage jobs. And then you have a community of people who still want to be something. So who still want to have stability. Rick, you want to speak to his point and my point?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Once you start cutting food stamps, these people don't have enough to make it already. So if you cut it, you just put them in desperation, cutting jobs for people who already didn't make enough on their job, So we're definitely gonna see another stress inside of our community with tax breaks that are going to be doing these things to our community.
Caller, thank you for calling in so much. What I want to, there was somebody that actually, when you make a good point, I'm going to shout that out. But when you say something that don't make sense, I'm going to hit you back too. There's somebody that said, my grandfather grew vegetables in the backyard. It's doable. Yeah, it's doable enough to make a pot of stew. But you're not finna support yourself today growing vegetables in the backyard.
Black people don't even have backyards. Most of the people don't even have a
Tell
house.
them, Rick.
They don't even own an apartment.
They got zoning against it. It's not 1920 anymore. We were a strong agricultural people. You got to understand, I've done the land piece. How many times do I have to go Google Antonio Moore land? It'll come up first. You can actually Google black land. What I showed is that white America owns 98% of the rural land. We own 1%. That's where you grow vegetables. That's where you grow. Do you know somebody with a farm? Yes, possibly. But do you know somebody who has enough land to give Tropicana its oranges? Not at all. And I think in a lot of instances, what we do is we create agency.
Well, and they won't buy from you no way.
That's what I was about to say.
They're still not going to buy them from you.
That's what we don't understand about America.
So now you're being boxed out again because you don't grow enough oranges, or your orange is not yellow enough or orange enough.
Wait for it, Rick. This is the thing I was asking you about. I had two questions. Everybody kind of always wanted to ask this. Okay. The first question is going to really be the second, which is, isn't this like one of the first times that a black man got the product straight off the boat? So usually we get it 3 hands down. We can't get stuff straight off of a boat. We don't have a home country. We don't understand that some of these other groups can, Chinese, different other groups. So that's the first question is that, and I'll answer that first, and then I'll come to the other question.
Yeah. It's the first time that I ever knew of that we were dealing directly with the people who was bringing the drugs into the country. Usually, and so many products that we can't even get. Even if you got the money, I can remember when I was trying to legitimize my money, and I would go to certain companies. And they wouldn't sell me product. They would say, "Oh, well, we already have a distributor in that area." So
tell them about the S curl. Tell them about the S curl.
Yeah, well, at one time, S curls and all those companies were owned by blacks. Well, what they did,
hair care products.
What they did is they allowed the Koreans to come over. The United States government loaned them the money to come to blacks and buy the product. Now, you can't even go to those companies and buy products in bulk. You basically boxed out.
Yeah. And it's such a trip because I think in some instances we recreate a normal that never happened here, where slavery was never real and Jim Crow wasn't real. I've interviewed Byron Allen. He's now a billionaire. And he sued Charter, Comcast, and Time Warner for billions because of being boxed out. And what black people that have no access and no exposure do is create a narrative where they weren't boxed out, where we weren't boxed out, where Jim Crow didn't happen, where people sold crack instead of going to UCLA. And it's just like this alternate universe that allows everybody to feel good enough that they can go to sleep at night. And I'm not saying that I don't understand their argument with calling what you did poisoning the community. What I don't understand is where you think that there was these valuable other options that didn't really happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Those, going to UCLA was a fantasy for most people. I mean, I knew very few blacks, and even the ones who had the money, it still was hard for them to get into UCLA. Otis Smith, who was the guy who found Anita Baker, who I loaned the money to. His son was fortunate enough to get into UCLA, but Otis had all kind of connections. Otis was a member of LA Tennis Club, the only black. You know, it was like
only black. This is an era. See, like literally, what's happened over the course of my life is, and when I say my life, you look at basically the early '80s to now, is this reinvention of blackness, and that reinvention included the Beyonceization of like the black female and the Jay-Zization of the black male, where it doesn't matter that Jay-Z dropped out of high school. What could a high school dropout do in 1982 other than sell dope?
I don't know.
I'm just asking. You know.
Well, we know they already took the trash jobs. You know, he couldn't ride on the trash truck no more. So his opportunities was very limited. You know, steal cars, rob, pimp.
Oh my God.
Sell drugs.
So let me ask you this. You know, we rolling here. We run into 8:15 today. So we got Rick. He's going nowhere. Tell him. No, I'm just kidding. So, like, what I wanted to ask is about John Singleton. He did this show, and you know, it kind of danced around your story.
Yeah.
What's your feeling on what John Singleton did? Is that I don't understand.
Well, you know, I'm disappointed, very disappointed with John, because me and John, I thought were friends. You know, we had lunch together a few times, and we talked. John was one of the first people to buy the book, you know, and for him to...
So he had the book.
He had the book. You know, you can go on his Facebook page. You can see him holding the book. You know, if you don't believe that he bought a book.
Okay.
And I didn't give it to him either. He paid for it. For him to go out and do the story and know me personally, I mean, who would do a story about LA in the 80s, selling drugs, and don't call Rick Ross up and consult with him?
And this is the interesting part, right? Where you have him saying, "Oh, I just based it on my experience." When did you sell some dope? How can you be the guy to get the root story from? And it's like, you know, I come back to you and I ask you, is that your story, or is it a male? What is that?
I haven't saw the story, but a lot of my friends and fans and family and they say it's my story. They said this guy is really related to me, and it's funny, you know. I just a couple days ago, man, I was at somebody's house, and when I walked in, they had John Singleton and the star of the show sitting at a microphone just like we are right now, and talking, and people had told me that the guy had some resemblance to me, and I could kind of see how they was trying to get him to favor me, you know, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting. People just asked about the book. So this book here is Rick's autobiography. We did it actually together. We did this together. You can go on Amazon, pick it up. Freeway Rick Ross autobiography. I have it sitting on the table so you can actually see it. What I want to do is now move to the importance of tax reform. Nobody's having this discussion with you. You know, you look across, people talk about Bitcoins. You know, if the middle black family is worth $4,000 without the car, that means that one Bitcoin is worth 2.5 black families. So what are we talking about? Stop talking to me about Bitcoins and start talking to me about tax reform. And so what I start seeing is we don't understand how the hood been moving. You know, when I say that, I mean, do you know that 66% of black children live in single-parent households? And that this tax reform literally changes the dynamic of how black America has been patching itself together. When I say that, I mean, we move from a system where a single mother of two could deduct $23,000 to $25,000 off of her gross to get her adjusted gross, to she gets the same deduction as everybody else. Everybody gets 12. Do you know what that does to the reality of the amount of services she'll be able to receive outside of taxes? Do you know what that does in terms of her refund? No more $9,000 refunds. It's going to be $3,000. Do you know what that does in terms of the stability of the government's ability to provide services to us if the rich don't pay the proper taxes? No more estate tax. This is how you maintain a system of inequity. So we come back. Last time we saw this was Trickle Down, Reaganomics. We started the show with this. I want to come back to it. Again, callers, you can call in 323-879-4445. I want your opinion on tax reform. So, Rick, what happens if we go back instead of going forward? And this I believe that it passed already. I know it passed the House. The vote for the Senate was tonight. They had enough votes. What happens if we go back?
Well, during tax time, the hoods definitely thrive. A lot of people are waiting and anticipating on those tax returns to do a lot of the things that they didn't have the money to do before a tax return. So it's going to be devastating for a lot of people. For me, though, it doesn't bother me. Every year I have to pay taxes. I'm out of IRS right now. They probably outside the door waiting on me.
They ain't waiting on you here. They ain't waiting on you here. Caller, can we bring this caller in? I hope you're talking tax reform. Caller, what is your name? Where are you calling from?
Darnell out that Tuscaloosa area.
What's up, Burnell?
What's up?
You about that Alabama? Y'all better get in the college football playoffs. But go ahead. Bring it to me.
Yeah, I want to speak on, you were speaking about the land, about them owning 98% of the land.
Mm-hmm. Rural land. But go ahead, bring it on.
I was saying that's part of the problem. That sounds like we just basically monopoly pieces running around on the board then.
It don't sound like it. We are. And that's one of the issues of how we analyze things is we analyze it in a bubble. So Rick sold crack like Nino Brown. Rick sold crack like Nino Brown. And essentially what actually happened is it wasn't like Nino Brown. It was actually much more convoluted. It was a community thing. And so what I want to do is ask Rick, anything you got to say about the land piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without land, you can't grow food. Without food, you can't sustain yourself. So you depended on somebody else to take care of your basic necessities. So you definitely need land. And land is one of the most valuable things that we got on the planet. I mean, they're not making any more land. We're running out of land.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do a small 1-minute commercial break. Come right back and wrap it up.
Beats by Nebs.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? So we got a few extra minutes here. We going close this thing up, but I want you guys to do something. Nobody is asking you guys to do this, but I'm gonna say, please go look up this tax reform. Look on CNN, look on Newsmax, whatever source you want to use. But just make sure The Hill is another good site. Make sure you start reading about the changes that are about to go down in your life. Don't let it hit you in January. Don't let it hit you when the budget cuts happen, because so often we playing around. We're using Facebook for all the other things, but the realness of this life, of this government is upon us. And I think that what I want to say is we see that black people are targeted for so many things. And what the New York Times did an article. I want you to Google it. 1.5 million missing black men. talking about working age black men. I did an article, and if you Google black male incarceration, I have an article that comes up first. It's called Black Male Incarceration is Real and Catastrophic. I wanted to show everybody, how can I show this? There's a total of like 12 million black males working age. 12, 13 million. And do you understand that 700,000 are incarcerated? Let me give you a context. I took 9 countries with 2 billion people with a B, and they have less altogether incarcerated than just black men.
Wow.
And what you start to understand is we come to Denzel Washington. I think Denzel had a recent statement where he essentially said it starts at the home and a lot of things. But what he couldn't answer for me is that black women grow up in the same homes with the same single fathers, but their incarceration is really low, almost like non-existent. They really don't even build prisons for women. So, and this isn't to say I want more prisons, but this is to deal with the vitriol, like.
Well, and I like to comment on that too. I just spoke at UCLA at a behind the bars program, and one of the things they said in this program that I didn't know, that in the late 70s we had 12 prisons in California.
How many?
12.
How many?
12 prisons in the late 70s.
Yes. And how many?
And it went from there to now to 30 prisons in California.
30?
Yeah, 30 prisons.
Woo.
But guess what? The crime rate didn't move.
Pause for a second. I talked to Michelle Alexander on the phone. And what's interesting is this, and I say this, you can go Google the black male incarceration piece I just told you. Black male incarceration is real and catastrophic. You know where you find the highest prison rates? Where we see diversity. Those countries that have multiple kinds of people. That's where we find the highest prison rates. But when it's homogeneous, like Switzerland or somewhere, no matter if they commit crimes, the prison rate doesn't go up. The treatment of how you treat people that do crimes is different. Now, what's interesting about America is we don't treat women the same as men. A lot of people will say, well, women don't commit as many crimes. That doesn't deal with, so effectively, I've shown the chart a number of times. The black male incarceration rate, okay, one of the highest incarceration rates we've ever seen in the nation was, in the world, was during apartheid in South Africa. It was 800 per 100,000. 800 per 100,000. Black males working age are at nearly 8,000 to 10,000 per 100,000. Black women are at 300 per 100,000. What we end up with is a system where we can't deny the fact that it moves beyond choice into targeting. And what I want to say is we got Freeway Rick here, we got Tonetalks here.
And longer prison times.
And we just had
for the same crimes.
They said it just right this week. New York Times released the article, 20% longer prison sentences for black men compared to white men. Now, if you compare black men to white women, it'll blow your mind probably. The same. I did a piece on Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias, she shot him, she stabbed him, she strangled him, and she still was questioning whether she was going to get the death sentence. And you had Jeffrey Toobin from CNN say, well, we don't know if people look like this should get the death sentence. And so, like, essentially what we come back to is a reality of a world that has decided it's going to treat people differently, that has decided it's going to treat descendants of slavery differently, that has decided it's going to treat descendants of slavery that are male differently. And what I want to do is, as we bring Rick towards the end, give Rick a chance to tell us about anything he has going on, and then I'm going to close out.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know, definitely should go get the book. The book is hot. We getting mad reviews on it. The book is so educational about what took place in the early 80s and the 70s. And it's a book that everybody needs to put their hands on. Right now, I'm currently going around the country touring with the book, pumping it up, and just trying to educate people about what it takes to become a drug dealer, what I went through as a young man growing up in South Central, and what so many other of our young people are going through today. That's why this book is so valuable to society. and I hope that everybody would go out and pick it up. Also, we got the movie we working on. We got a TV series that's in the works. We got quite a few things coming on. I hear the documentary is going to be on Netflix here in a couple months, so y'all go check that out as well. And we just gonna keep pumping, man. I got a clothing line that's coming. What else? I ventured into the marijuana industry, the legal marijuana industry. So that's another venture that I'm into right now. So holla at your boy. You can get me on Facebook at Freeway Ricky Ross. I'm on Twitter at Freeway Ricky and Instagram at Freeway Ricky. And I appreciate Tonio having me on. Me and Tonio spent quite a few years together, and it was a learning experience for me. He taught me a lot about the numbers and the other things, and y'all fortunate to have him on the air right now and enjoy him and listen to him because the brother got a lot of wisdom.
So Tone Talks is bringing you the real, and I brought the real Rick Ross on today to have this discussion. What I want to make sure everybody understands is that it requires a fertile ground for things like the crack cocaine epidemic to set in, and we're about to move into an era where that fertile ground is going to be reset. The question becomes, will you be prepared to make sure your child is not caught up in the ravages of what comes next? Are you prepared to stand between the doorway of your home and your child meeting the streets in the wrong way? I think for a lot of us, the first step is we got to be informed. We got to understand that this is not a game, that tax reform is real and has a real impact on all of us across this nation. Again, go to tonetalks.org to subscribe and donate. I started putting this on a podcast, so you can catch this show again on Dash Radio, 8 a.m., I believe, Tuesdays. And then you can also catch it on my podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in.